let's get started. So our UX job market discussion, and I'm going to introduce you to Heidi so that we can get started. So Heidi is an internal recruiter at User Interviews. She has a background in recruiting and hiring roles within Fortune 500 clients in the tech industry and hiring candidates for UX, UXR, and design roles. She is an empathetic relationship cultivator who enjoys working with candidates to build long-lasting, personalized relationships. Welcome, Heidi, and thank you so much for being here. So we're going to start off with some of the questions that were submitted to us pre-event, and we'll leave some time at the end to take live questions. So be sure you're posting your questions in this Zoom chat here, and someone on our team is going to be monitoring those. So can you tell us about the process you take in finding and identifying candidates to proceed with in the hiring process?
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. Something that I do when I first begin the hiring process is I like to connect with the hiring managers just to discuss the role in more depth so that I can really get some insight into the role, learn more about it. And this helps me before I begin reviewing resumes and screening to really have an idea of what the hiring manager is looking for in a candidate. So it helps me to identify candidates who are going to be a good match for that role. Not only do I review their resume, but I also will look at LinkedIn pages. If you have a portfolio or a website, I kind of like to see the whole picture and get a better idea of what your background is and what your experience is. So that's something I personally like to do before I start my screenings.
Awesome, thank you. And I think one kind of follow-up question is, what do you see or what advice do you have that could really set candidates apart? What's something that when you see a candidate that really stands out?
Something that really can make, you look, well, to have you stand out a little bit more. Just a couple resume, I guess I'll share some resume tricks that I look for and that help me as a recruiter. It's good to, under the name of the company where you previously worked or where you're currently working, a nice little resume trick to kind of help you stand out is put a little blurb underneath about that company. What do they do? This is really helpful to recruiters and hiring managers. It gives you just some more ideas of what your background's been, especially if it's at a company name, like one of the big tech companies that really stands out that we all know what they do. It's a really good way to tell your recruiter and hiring managers what it is you did at that company. Another thing that's really good and helpful to stand out is really easy things. Link your LinkedIn page to your resume. Same with your website or your portfolio. It's easy for the recruiter just to click on your links and to review all your information just from your resume in that one document. Another thing that is really good is to list tools that you're really proficient in. If it's a tool you're just started learning, it's okay if you still want to list it, but just maybe call out on your resume or even when you're having your screening with the recruiter that you're just learning this tool. I think being honest and upfront about it in the beginning is the best way to be, and it doesn't hurt you to tell someone that you're trying to learn and grow in that tool or that skill. It's just good to let them know that maybe you don't have the 2 years experience, but you're looking to learn from that.
Awesome, thank you, super helpful. So I'm going to move on to our next question, and we would love to know, when you're talking with a candidate, what are some things that you're looking for that might not be on their resume?
Something I look for that usually isn't always on resumes. I like to do a deeper dive into learning more about candidate soft skills. I think soft skills are overlooked, and I think that they're extremely important, especially in the UX and the research world. I think it tells a lot about people's backgrounds, their experience. Not only do I ask them what their top soft skills are in their day-to-day, it doesn't even have to be with their work experience. It could also be, what's your experience or what do you do best in your day-to-day? And I ask for examples of that, because maybe someone's a mom or a dad and maybe they're really good at time management. That can easily correlate to the role that we're speaking of, and you don't even have to really go into details about it. Like, as a recruiter, I will take that information and use that to my benefit. And oftentimes I take that information about the soft skills and I include it in my summaries to the hiring managers to give a little more idea about people's backgrounds and what they are really strong at.
I love that. I think soft skills are a super important thing that aren't always the easiest to share on paper, but definitely come across, in conversation. And I think that's a really great point about bringing that up. So sort of as a follow-up, what would you say are some do's and don'ts for candidates that they should be talking about when you're having these conversations?
Do you mean as far as like if there was a negative experience they encountered or?
Yeah, exactly. That was that was actually like kind of part two of the question is
Okay.
how would you recommend or how do you suggest that a candidate could talk about a negative experience?
So I think that talking about a negative experience, what you can do is it's okay to talk about that experience. It doesn't look bad on your part or anyone's part. I think that you find a silver lining from those experiences and you learn and grow from them. So maybe you take that experience that you had, whether it was a bad encounter with a manager or team, something that took place, but you learn about what from that difficult moment you could take to better yourself or maybe it's something that you want to um, find a role that is important to you. So maybe your current company doesn't have these aspects of what you're looking for, and you can take that and you can learn from it and learn that about yourself that you want this from your next company. So I try to take the bad experiences and find the good in them somehow so you can grow and learn from it.
Great. There's always a silver lining. It's just about finding it, right? Okay.
And
So
sometimes you don't know it until, yeah, you don't know it until after it takes place.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so now we're going to talk specifically a little bit more about resumes and portfolios. What are some common mistakes or red flags that you see when you're looking through resumes?
I'd say the biggest and common mistake, I don't know, I think the biggest one I see oftentimes is maybe poor spelling and grammar. I know that sounds really easy. I know these are the basics, but sometimes I think not that you do it on purpose, but you're just in a hurry. I'm a big believer in always double checking and triple checking, whether it's your resume, your email. I know, and on our team at user interviews, my team, we are constantly like having each other review each other's work before we blast it out to the company. It's just really important to have an extra set of eyes on it. So even after you double check or triple check your own resume, have a family member or a friend look it over too. They might be able to give you some insight into it as well, that you, after staring at it for hours, didn't see.
Absolutely. Always helpful to have that second set of eyes and just make sure sometimes when you're looking at something for so long, you miss something. So having a friend or, someone else take a look, a mentor even, definitely helps a lot. Or what's something that you would see on a resume that you might not, move forward with that candidate?
I think that it depends, but I think if you are more junior or entry in your level of a role, um, I think it is really important to pay attention to the roles you're applying to. Like if you're just starting out, you don't want to apply to a role that's asking for at least 6+ years experience. Um, that is something that is going to cause us to move along because, you know, hiring managers are looking for specific skill sets for at these certain levels of roles that they're hiring for. So I would say that, but on the other hand, I don't think that it's a bad thing if you are more senior in your role and if you're trying to get into a new field like UX, you might have to start out more entry. And to me, I think that that is completely okay. I just think the candidate has to know and understand that by doing so, you will probably have to take a little bit of a pay cut and title change, and you just have to be okay with that because, that's important that you are upfront about that with the recruiter from the very first initial stage of hiring.
I think that's great. And that really transitions well to our next question, which is, if you are transitioning to another field, which I know a lot of people are currently in this situation, how can someone in that situation make their previous experience relevant to the role that they're applying for?
Yeah. So This is a trickier question. Definitely, I've given some thought to it, but it is a little difficult. I do think though, what you can do is pay attention in job postings, pay attention to keywords. I know that's something you probably hear a lot when you're job searching, but find those keywords or those certain things that really do relate to what your current experience or your past experience has been, and find a way to express that and explain the why that relates to you in your current role and how you could bring that into your new role, whether you're transitioning to UX or marketing, anything that you're transitioning into. For example, I'll use myself. Since I recruit, I've actually learned this over the last couple of years recruiting. A lot of recruiters have this transition where they could go into a sales role. There's that weird, like, I feel like I'm recruiting people and learning about them, but people are making sales, and it's just a different type of product, right? But there's a very good correlation between the two things. So you just have to find those insights that can really try to help you stand out. Sorry, this is a harder question. I've been thinking about this one all day. I think too, if you're currently in a company though, and you're not in UX or UX research, but they do offer it, a great thing to do is to maybe meet up with people from that team and get to learn a little bit more about the role with them. Ask them to have coffee, try to learn more about the role and how you could break in. And maybe you take a role on that team within the same company if something opens up, and maybe it's more entry level, but it would break you into it. And the bonus would be you'd always already know the product and the organization and the culture of the company. So I know that doesn't go for everyone, but if you are in a position to do that, I think that's a great way to transition.
I really love that advice. And I think that the kind of more indirect casual networking can really go a long way, and like getting to know people on a personal level, and then seeing, you know, where that takes you. I think that's a super important and really helpful advice. You know, there has been some debate about whether UX researchers specifically need portfolios. So we would love to hear your thoughts on UX research portfolios.
Well, I didn't know this was such a big debate, but don't be mad at me, those of you who disagree, but I do think they are good to have. I think it's just an added bonus to your resume to even glorify more, you know, what your experience is. I think having a website or a portfolio is an incredibly strong way of showing hiring managers your thought process, you know, your work, that, you know, what were your goals? What were the backgrounds and the challenges and the methods you used? Like, what impacted your findings? What could you have done differently? I think it just does a deeper dive into your work, and it's just another way to really show off everything you've done. So I do lean on that side that they are good to have.
Awesome. And I think too, if you could share a little bit of insight in terms of what you're looking for, or what recruiters in general are kind of looking for when they are looking at portfolios.
Absolutely. So it depends. Again, something I do, just background on how I look at portfolios. I'm usually in the recruiting and hiring process, the first person is the recruiter is the first person to review portfolios. When I'm having those conversations with hiring managers, if they have other people on their team who have similar portfolios, something I do ask for is to see an example of them so that I can compare when I'm looking at candidates to see where they are the same. It really helps me in my process. But yeah, I like to have, it's a great tool for me as a recruiter to focus on the must-haves in portfolios and what they're looking for. So I think it depends on what type, if we're talking about UX design, if we're talking about UX research, what you're going to have in your portfolio. I know this is kind of leading into the next question, but user interviews where the company I work at, we have a blog, and there actually was a really great link I found on there while researching this question. I'm happy to share it in the Zoom link. It actually is a great blog post about the kind of information you should include in your UX research portfolio. So if you're okay with it, I'll share it in there. after I'm done.
Yeah, absolutely. We love resources, and we do usually post the chat and share resources after the event. So anything that you can share is always welcome.
Okay, I'll put that in there. It just kind of goes over to like, it's a good idea to, include your research process and toolbox, collaborating with key stakeholders, explaining the why you did certain decisions on your project. So I'll post the whole thing in there after we're done with our discussion.
Awesome. Okay, perfect. And I think too, I know we already started kind of talking about what kind of information, and we can go a little bit deeper into that the next question. But before I do move on to that, I think if you could just share kind of at what stage do portfolios get reviewed within the interview process?
Yeah, it starts with the recruiter. Again, that's why I like to ask hiring managers if they have examples or if they have specifics they can really, explain to me with what they're looking for. I enjoy looking at portfolios. I think I learn a lot about a candidate by looking at them. I take my reviewing of portfolios and resumes into consideration before I even screen, so I can learn a little bit more about the projects and work that candidates have worked on.
That's great. Thank you so much. Okay, and so I guess I know you already started kind of to touch on this, and what kind of information should be included. So I guess to be a little more specific, is there kind of a gauge or number in terms of how many projects should be included in a portfolio?
I don't think there's a number. I think you want your portfolios to always be clean. So I don't think you want to have an overabundance of projects on there. I would say, if you have a couple in the works that aren't complete, it's of course okay to have on there like coming soon, but maybe you don't want to have more than one or two of those. It's always good to have, I don't know, I would say 3 to 4 projects is a good number from start to finish.
Perfect. Yeah, I mean that's usually around the number that is kind of floating out there. I think 3 is a good aim, and to kind of go from there. Any other advice that you have specific to portfolios?
Nothing other than I just think, honestly, show your work off. I think they're great. I think as a recruiter, I enjoy looking at them. I think a resume, of course, is a wonderful tool. We all need them. LinkedIn as well. Something I would like to say, though, that I have noticed as a recruiter is if you're comfortable with it, I often notice that not a lot of candidates, when I'm doing passive sourcing on LinkedIn Recruiter, include their portfolios in their LinkedIn profiles. I think it's a really good idea to do so. I think it's just another way for when if a recruiter is passively sourcing, if your portfolio is in there, and like I talked about earlier, I have an example I'm looking for and yours is a match, I'm going to reach out to you and see if you want to move forward and learn more about our role. So just another tip. Don't feel like you have to, but just my own advice.
I think that's very valuable advice. So include your portfolio in your LinkedIn profile. Talk a little bit more about like transitioning, sort of. So I guess what are some concerns that exist when you are hiring people who are new to the UX research field?
I would say, let's think about this. Concerns that exist with hiring people who are new to the UX research field. I don't know if I would say what my concerns are. I would just say, I think that, you just want to, I don't know, Nicole, you might stump me on this one. Let me think about this for a second.
Okay. So let me look at some of these other kind of follow-up questions to see if we can.
Yeah, let me come back to that one. Let me think about that.
Okay, perfect. So you know what? I'll actually skip to the next one, and I think this could help bring it back to that. So let me move on to this next one here, and any advice that you can share on how to break into UX.
Yes. This one, I think something that, is going to be some good advice for everyone is I think when we think of UX, not all of us, but many think of tech. And I think that a great thing to do is if you're looking to break into UX right now, is just look everywhere. Don't just keep yourself in the tech field. Companies all over, all different industries hire for UX research. And when you're searching for a role, especially if you're just trying to break into it right now, I think get that experience where you can, and then grow your resume and your experience. And if tech, or if there's a specific company you have in mind that you really want to break into one day, get that experience on your resume and learn and grow, and then go for it. Because I don't know, when I'm on LinkedIn, or even I'm just doing a search, with who's hiring for what to try to help other people. There's a lot of industries hiring for UX right now that you wouldn't even think, like grocery, retail, healthcare. There's just so many different industries you could break into right now. So, don't just put yourself in one box, like really look at everything that's out there.
I think that's really great advice, and sort of keeping your options open, make sure you're looking, kind of across the board, and not limiting yourself to one thing. I think that's super helpful. And so our next kind of question here is, what are some things you do that kind of humanize this whole recruitment process?
So I love humanizing experiences. Like I am not a recruiter who is ever going to just do a Q&A session. Nicole and I were actually talking about this earlier. I actually start every conversation off with, this is just going to be a relaxed conversation. Let's try to get to know each other. Usually my first question is about, where do you live? And I, cliche and cheesy as it is, usually ask about what the weather's like where they're at currently. And then that leads into, oftentimes, if the candidate has kids, or if they're just graduated. I like to take the time to really get to know someone. And then I believe in being fully transparent and honest. So, if I'm speaking to a candidate, maybe after our conversation's coming to an end, if it's not a perfect match and I know that maybe they're too junior, or this isn't the right role right now, I like to continue the conversation and keep in touch, because you never know when another role might open up, and it's good to keep that open communication. I also like to be really open and honest with candidates about, we discuss salary. I think that's an important thing to discuss from the very first initial call with a recruiter. You don't want to get through 4 to 5 rounds of a interview and not know what the salary band or range is, because if it's not what you're looking for and you get all the way to the end, you'll have just wasted your time and the company's time. So it's good to have those salary discussions in the very first call with your recruiter. And then I like to also give candidates complete insight into what our interview process is going to look like. If they, after the hiring manager reviews their resume, I tell them, what are the 3, different rounds of interviews, and what the length of them will be, and just, keep in touch with them. If they have any questions, they can always follow up with me after.
That's great. We love the transparency and the honesty, and I think I do really think it goes such a long way. And so I'm very happy to hear that, and happy that that's something that you incorporate in the recruitment process and the hiring process.
Yeah, it's important.
Absolutely. At the end of the day, we are all humans, so very, very important to keep that. So yes. I am actually we've gotten some really amazing questions in the chat here. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen. That kind of comes to the end of some of the pre-event questions that we had posted from you all. So let me stop sharing my screen, and then we're going to jump into answering some of the questions that were posted live in the chat. What reasons would you hire a less experienced candidate versus a more experienced one?
I think that sometimes it's good to take, I believe that anyone can grow in a role. I think that someone who is you know, looking to start off in a new role and they may not have as much experience, they might be more willing to really put in that time and to, you know, take on more. I don't want to say take on more, but they're really going to be interested in learning and growing in that role. So um, I am a big believer in doing that actually. So I think there's a lot of reasons, but I think that you don't necessarily have to have the number of years of experience to be good at taking on a role.
How important is it to keep your resume to one page? Let's say you have a really long history, job history. Is it better to include all of that and have it more than one page, or is kind of rule of thumb stick to one page?
No, I think that no, I think 2 pages is absolutely acceptable. I think most people are going to get to having 2 pages, especially as you grow in your career. I just, if you don't have to have unnecessary experience on there, like, you know, don't add it. But don't feel like you're limited to just having 1 page. That's not something that you necessarily need to do.
Right. I think that is, you know, definitely a question that we hear a lot, and a question that people ask a lot in terms of kind of what to do with that. So I think that's great. I think on the same kind of note, how important are cover letters?
Oh,
Another favorite question. I'm sure that you get asked this a lot.
this is my own opinion, and there might be many recruiters who don't agree with me, but I I don't like cover letters. I think they're unnecessary. I think that if you want to write one, I think I do read them. I just don't think that you I think we're past those days where they should be required. I think if you want to include one, sometimes it is a good way to explain. Like, for example, if you are pivoting in from a different background, I think that it's a great place to give a little more explanation, you know, why and what you're trying to do. But no, I do not believe that they should be required. I think only if you want to include one, but don't feel like you have to. I know at user interviews, we do not require them.
That's great. And I think, you know, refreshing to hear. For sure.
Others might disagree with me, but that's my own personal opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I do think it does come down to preference sometimes, and sometimes it's required and you should include it. And if it's not, I do think it's up to you. And you know, it's part of why we wanted to have you here, just to hear your opinion and how you know, what you do in your day to day. So appreciate the
Absolutely.
insight. Another question that came up was, are there any resources or places you would recommend for candidates to look for job postings, UXR positions specifically, or just in general, some resources that you can share to look for jobs?
Yeah. Let's see. I mean, if you're looking for roles in tech, there is a great website called Built In. They have a lot of tech jobs, startups. I believe it's builton.com. I'll look that up and I can send that to you after. But even if you go on LinkedIn and you search, you know, for specific roles, LinkedIn is a great tool. Another great thing to do is if there's a company or an industry you're interested in, if to use LinkedIn as your tool, go through your network to see if anyone you know is connected to someone who works at one of those companies. It's a great way to network and learn if there is a job opening, and maybe figure out a way to get to know someone there who might be connected to someone you already know.
That's great. I think the networking piece of it is always really important. So I'm glad that you know, have touched on that throughout, and that it is something that comes up, that continues to come up. The next question that we got was, what do you do if UX research is in your role but not in your title? How do you sort of list something like that on your resume. So you have the experience, you've done the work, but you aren't necessarily sitting under that title. So how does that come? How do you put that in your resume so it comes across?
Yeah, I think just explain in your resume what you did. So if you were a part of, you know, user surveys, or if you, I don't know, whatever it is you did, I mean, explain it in your resume. I actually worked with a candidate a couple of years ago. She was in a similar situation. She wanted a specific role, and people weren't taking her seriously about it. So we just kind of worked together to figure out how she could really show those skills off from her other roles. And I think if you really highlight them in your resume and explain as best you can, again, use the keywords from the job description to tie in what you did within research or UX, whatever it is, the role you're going for, how that comes across. And explain in your screening with the recruiter, like call it out even more. Or if you don't want to send a cover letter, don't. But if you do, and there's a way to call it out through a cover letter, even if it's just a quick paragraph explaining those details, I think that's an instance where a cover letter might be helpful.
That's great. And I think another sort of a little bit more specific question in terms of what to include and what not to include. Let's say you've worked on, and this is more about portfolios. So if you have projects for maybe grad school, is that something that you should include in a portfolio? If they've taught you research but are not UXR specific.
Yeah, I think so. I think if your portfolio maybe doesn't have as many other examples either, I think you absolutely should include those projects. I see that oftentimes, and I think too, if someone doesn't have as much research experience or UX design experience, sometimes it's a good thing to do projects on the side yourself. Maybe things that don't relate to your current job, and add those projects to your resume. I think anything you can do to show off your work, whether it's through a job or just a project-based thing or through school, is a good thing. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Make sure I'm not going off topic here.
No, you're good. I mean, people are always gonna have kind of more specific questions about how it specifically relates to them. And so this is all just kind of general advice that the majority of us can hopefully take and apply to our situations. So
okay, good.
Yeah, all good. Another question that we got in the chat was, what is the best way to communicate with recruiters if you currently have a job and you're looking for new opportunities, but you don't want your current employer to know that you're looking for new opportunities?
Yeah, so if I'm going to go back to LinkedIn because I think it's a really good tool. There is something you can do on LinkedIn. You can turn your open to work on. There will be an option for you to put your green banner on or not to. You're going to want to make sure you don't turn your green banner on, but that will notify other recruiters at different companies that you are open to work when we're doing passive sourcing on LinkedIn through LinkedIn Recruiter. But the good thing is it does not allow for anyone at your company, including recruiters, HR, to know that you're looking elsewhere. So it's a great way to, even if you're not seriously looking, but you're just interested to see what's out there, to see if a recruiter might reach out to you. It's a good way just to kind of, see what's out there on the job market.
And then I think it's sort of a follow-up question, aside from that on LinkedIn, is there any other advice or tips you have on how someone can get in touch with a recruiter?
Yeah, just reach out. I mean, in defense of all of us recruiters, everyone is different, but I tried to get back to people if you message me on LinkedIn. I know I fall behind a lot of times, and I always apologize when I did this actually last night. I was responding to messages in my inbox that I hadn't been able to get to for quite a while. I always feel bad, but when you're working full time, sometimes um, your inbox gets full, and LinkedIn. By the time I'm ready, I'm a mom, so by the time I take care of my kids and everything else, sometimes I am just burned out by the end of the day. But yeah, reach out. It never hurts. The worst that's going to happen is you're not going to hear back from someone, and that's not going to change what your current situation is. But I do my very best due diligence to get back to everyone. You can always even reach out. If you applied for a role, sometimes candidates will follow up with an email to my work account just to say, I'm interested in this role. I just wanted to let you know I applied. It never hurts. I think it's always good to, again, if nothing else, it's good to network and reach out and connect with people.
That's great. Again, the back to the we are all human, so it doesn't hurt to to send a follow up if you haven't heard from someone. And we're all going through it. I think one other question that we got that I think was a really great one is if you can give kind of an example, what is a regular process? Like, what does the regular hiring process look like? How many interviews? What are kind of the steps that a candidate would go through? Obviously speaking general again, but a typical process for hiring. Are there whiteboard challenges, number of interviews, portfolio review, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I think it depends on the level of the role. I think that's going to change how many steps there are. But just for a generalized idea, we usually do, a 20 to 30 minute recruiting screen with a candidate. Then, next step might be a half hour to 45-minute call with the hiring manager. From there, you might do a team interview where you meet with some of the members from the team that you'd be working with. And then I would say final would probably be maybe you meet with someone from leadership or maybe the hiring manager again with somebody from leadership. So I would say typical, if you don't count the recruiter screen, because I don't really count that as an interview, it's more of a get to know you and learn about the company call. I'd say typically 3 to 4 rounds, anywhere from a half hour to 45 minutes per round. Again, it depends on the role though, if it's more senior level or how detailed it is.
Thank you. I think that's super helpful just to kind of give everyone a little bit of a sense of, what the process looks like and, letting people have a better understanding of what to expect. So, those were kind of some of the highlight questions, top questions. I know we got a lot on the same kind of note. So I think just as sort of a wrap up and final question, I would love to ask you, any last piece of advice, or maybe there's something we didn't touch on today that you think would be super helpful, just in terms of advice for people who are currently in the job market.
Yeah, I would say just keep your, resumes, your portfolios, your LinkedIn pages, keep everything updated. If you take new courses or if you learn new skill sets, make sure you add those as you're, searching for your new role. I think it's important to really make those things shine and stand out, that you are, taking the initiative to learn these things if you are taking courses. And job searching is like a full-time job in itself. So give yourself some grace, and it's a lot of work. And if you get asked to do interviews, take them. Even if it's maybe not the job of your dreams, you might realize going through the process, if you keep moving through it, that, maybe this is more along the lines of what I was looking for and I didn't realize it. Or maybe it's a job you really wanted, but you didn't get it. Taking any interview, in my opinion, is good practice, even if you don't get the job, because it's just preparing you and setting you up to do really well at the job that you're going to land. So take the interviews, and I know it's a lot of work, but it's really good practice, and it's just going to prep you even more for every single one that you have.
I think that's really great advice. And the, give yourself grace, super important. And taking interviews as using them as prep. And I think one last question too is kind of, what's something that you do in your personal life? I mean, you're talking to a lot of candidates and, seeing a lot of resumes, portfolios, whatnot, but what's something that you do that kind of gives you a chance to reset or gives you a little bit of that break that you need? Like how do you sort of, give yourself a break too?
Oh, it's a good question. Well, right now, my kids, I am very involved with my husband and I, my daughter's in travel volleyball, so we've been going to tournaments and that's really fun to watch. I love to read. So at night I read a lot of times to clear my mind before I go to bed. And I'm being really honest, I like to binge different shows. On all the good streaming channels, but no, and just spending time with friends and I'm a social person, so I think it's important to spend time with family and friends too outside of work.
That's great. Thank you so much. That really appreciate it. So that kind of, wraps up our discussion. We are going to go ahead and jump into our networking portion. And I just wanted to say thank you so much to Heidi. This was really great, super useful information. I hope everyone, if you can't stay for networking, I hope that you found this session helpful, informative, got some good tips and some good resources. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again, and then we'll kind of go through the breakout rooms and the networking, and you're all welcome to stay for that portion. I will just say one quick thing before, if you are going to drop off before networking, we will be sending a link for our follow-up survey in the chat. So do make sure you fill that out. We love the feedback. We love to hear your thoughts on the event tonight and what you want to see more of. So we'll post a link to that in the chat. And just thank you so much to Heidi. We really appreciate this. And this
Thanks
was a
for
great way
having
to
me.
kick off the new year.
Thanks for having me. I enjoyed it. Nice to meet all of you. Good luck with everything. Reach out if you need advice or tips or anything. I'm here.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. And I am going to share my screen again here.
Roles, I would look for UX research as a keyword. I would look for consumer insights, market research, and then those would be the core roles. And I would look on LinkedIn and Indeed. And then if you're at a senior level, I would tell you also ladders. And those would be the core three that I would go. I skew very heavily toward LinkedIn and Indeed. Ladders would be number 3 for me. Just sharing. Don't know if that helps.
Super helpful. And that's exactly what we want to happen here, is for anyone to kind of jump in and share. We're a diverse group. There's a lot of different people coming from different spaces. So love to hear from everyone.
Can I ask Ari how long it took you to get your job?
Yes, you can. So complicated because it's complicated because I had applied at Twilio before I got the second job that I lost. So it was a compressed time frame. I think that even in today's market, if you're doing the right things, I think that you could be okay in 6 to 10 weeks. I think you could land a role if you're doing the right things. And if you're not getting it in that time frame, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I will tell you what's wrong with your LinkedIn profile. I'll tell you what's wrong with your resume. I'll even tell you what's wrong with your story, and I'll try to do it gently.
No, I want to give it to me hard, Ari. Don't sugarcoat it, please.
I will give you what you need to hear, but I will try to, I will give it to you very direct. I think that I was talking to somebody in one of the breakout groups about this, and the difference between people who are going to get the jobs now and the people who are going to continue to shoot out resumes and hope are those that tell the right story. Okay. So like it's not in qualitative versus quantitative. It's not in max diff versus conjoint versus ethnography versus interviews. It's in, can you tell a hiring manager how you can take a problem and present a solution? And there's 5 things a business cares about. Okay. This is a very big secret. I'm going to give them to you right now. So, and I'll repeat them twice. So in case you don't get it, it's growth, value, adaptability, risk, and speed. Businesses want to grow growth. They want to increase business value. So now follow me here, because we're all in UX and we're like, well, isn't it about increasing customer value? Yes, it's about increasing customer value, but the end goal the business wants is only to increase customer value because it increases business value. So there's growth and value. Adaptability. Can you imagine if you were a researcher and you were able to tell people that a recession was coming 9 months before it hit? Adaptability. Risk. They want to mitigate risk. Risk costs business money. And speed. They want to put things out faster than competitors. There are some exceptions to speed. Happy to debate those, but generally growth, value, adaptability, risk, and speed. So your story, for example, should be, I do research that like, I'm going to use something very basic. I'm going to use a usability study, because people are like, well, usability studies don't show this. A usability study, the story you would say is, we conducted this usability study, which increased customer value, which translated to increased business value. You have to explicitly tell that story. Otherwise, what you're left with is what everybody else is doing. I do qualitative research. As a hiring manager, I don't care that you do qualitative research. No offense to anybody that does that.
Thank you, Ari. It's perfect.
You bet. Anytime.
Awesome, thank you. And then I saw, Carrie, you had your hand raised. Was it in response or a new question?
New question. So if somebody had a related question or follow-up to Ari, I wouldn't mind waiting.
Did anyone have a follow-up off of that, or let me jump to the next one?
It's tangential.
Okay, go for it.
So I was curious. So Ari, you were mentioning like consumer insights, market research, like other terms for UX researchers. And I was curious if any of y'all had any insight on some of the different things that, or titles for user researchers. So like design research versus user research, is it the same thing? Any thoughts? Product research, design research, user research, yeah.
I think my question is in conjunction to yours as well, because I mean, I came in sideways to UX research. I came in sideways as a UX designer into the space as a researcher. And I think design research is similar to, I mean, it's not quite similar. I mean, you're looking at user-centered design principles as design research. You're testing out how the UI looks as opposed to like generative or discovery type contextual interviews and stuff like that. So that's just my thought, but I'll ask my question after we figure this one out.
Can I speak for a little bit?
Sure, go for it.
Thank you. So I think what you're trying to say is design research and UX research have a little bit of distinction to that. I think it's not only about the UI, that design researchers see things differently because business value and growth, because we see things from users' perspectives and more towards the value of the user rather than seeing things from the business perspective. I think that's how we can narrow it down a little bit more. I hope that makes sense.
Hey, Nicole, I'm going to jump in. So my perspective is design research, product research, UX research are all 3 sides of the same coin, because we love to reinvent terms for what we do. And the bottom line is research is asking the right questions to deliver the right value to the customer. And it depends on the organization you're talking to, what they want to call it. I've been at organizations that want to call it UX research and some that want to call it design research. But the reality is it's different from market research, right? And that's an important distinction. But it's not different as much from what product managers would do, that we should be too concerned with that differential. We are trying to determine, and I would say that the more important distinctions in research are generative, foundational, or evaluative, right? And so I would not distinguish them in design, product, or UX. So I would look for any of those types of things if you're looking for a research position. The other thing I would look for is research strategist, because or I'm sorry, UX strategist, because that can also be an important one. UX architect can also be an important one that sort of straddles the line between design and research and is more geared toward the strategy and directional level.
And also, Anthony, too, I also think I came across the idea of a product designer. They also embrace that type of UI, UX, and research as well. So,
yeah, I would agree, and I would embrace what Jacob Nielsen says, is that our industry is rife with vocabulary inflation. So don't get too caught up in the little nuances of what different recruiters or different hiring managers say they're looking for. Look at the requirements of the position and understand that if you're in UX, you're likely in the right ballpark, and you should pursue that position if it's in the direction of design or research that you're inclined to follow.
Wow.
Awesome, thank you. Mike, did you have a separate follow-up question, or that was part of your?
That was part of my question, because I think there's a lot of us in this group where we got caught up in the wave of recent layoffs. I'm one of them, and so I was struggling over the weekend with a bit of an identity crisis, because I was trying to figure out who I was, because like I said in the beginning, I laterally moved over a couple areas within UX. I was a UX designer, and then I became a UX researcher, and then the last position I was a product designer, because I was taking on both of those roles. And so then I was like struggling, how do I present myself? But then Anthony, made a good point. It's like, don't get caught up in all those names, because if you're in, like you said, if you're in UX, you're going to touch all those pieces. So I just have to make sure that my resume represents all three areas, and then I can just say unicorn on the top of my resume. So.
Exactly. I think too, focusing on the skills and your takeaways and what were some wins that you had, and highlighting those things, and will always be helpful in your journey. And writing those down so you've got them, and just practicing how you're telling your story and how you come across. So, anyone else have any questions that they wanted to ask or thoughts? I did. Sorry, go ahead.
Chime in on that last topic, which is while many UX roles can overlap, I do think there is a difference between designer and researcher. So in my case, I am not a designer. I love designers. Some of my best friends are designers, but I know that's not my skill set. And so for me, when looking at research roles, I had to make sure, hey, are they asking for a designer / researcher? That's not for me, versus being a researcher. Now, if like Mike, you can do all of those, and in fact, you want to do all of those, that's great. That does increase if folks are looking for a generalist, hey, you fit that. If they're looking for a specialist, you'll need to sell the fact that you can do that specialty to the depth that they want, but you having that background in other roles is a great bonus.
Okay.
So just wanted to add that in.
Thank you. Yeah. I was wondering, it's like, am I a researcher amongst all my peers right here, or am I a designer? So it's like this split personality is happening over the weekend and trying to figure out where I stand. So thank you.
Awesome, thanks.
Can I add one more thing to this? Because I think it's,
Sure.
look, as you guys are thinking about roles and what you want to do, Mike, this even applies to you. Like those of you that are going to LinkedIn or Indeed or looking at roles and you kind of know where you want to go, to Anthony's point, like don't listen to what people are saying. Look at what the job descriptions are saying and use that language. Like the language in the job description is going to tell you the language that you should be using in your resume and your LinkedIn profile. Like use the data, be a researcher and use the data you have available to help you point toward the right roles. And the only other thing I'm going to tell you is be cautious in the market research with the market research one, because market research is one of those roles that is a little, yes, it's related, but you could end up in a role. If you want to be in UX and you end up in a market research role, they are different. They are different. Having worked both, I could tell you they are different.
I know that they're different and they're different skill sets and background, but it's like, I do want to point out that I like that you still have your Christmas tree up.
I had the same thought.
Beautiful. It's a Valentine Christmas tree. I don't know what it is, but I love it.
Well, if you thought that was funny, our Halloween decorations, we turned those into Christmas decorations. The skeletons had Christmas hats and stuff on them.
That's awesome.
That's
We love to see it. The repurposing, reusing, recycling, reduce. I think your point though, Ari, about like using the language from the job description is super helpful and super important to make sure that you're kind of speaking the same language as the job itself. And you know, that's what they're looking for. So I think that's a great point. Did anyone else have a question that they wanted to ask or comment?
I have a question.
Sure.
I was hoping, I wrote down a question in the chat when the recruiter was speaking, but it was pertaining to like career transitioning. So I was just wondering if anybody has like good insight on like how to, I guess, like position yourself in a way, like when you're applying for jobs. I've applied to several positions, mainly like a lot of them are like 3 to 5 years of experience, and coming from a non-UX research, UX design role, I've gotten a lot of rejections, and as expected, but I guess like to try and like tackle past that, how can you like land an interview as a career transitioner with, I come from like a customer facing background, a lot of retail, a lot of a lot of job roles like that. So I was just, how can you present that and make it transition into UX?
I think that's a great question, and I'm sure one that is very relatable. Does anyone have any thoughts that they want to share?
A little bit. With that identity crisis, I was trying to figure out what type of resume to put out there, and I was so used to doing the chronological, but I ran into an idea of, if you're transitioning between from one area to another, you need to figure out what are your transferable skills from your job and put them into word speak as a UX space, and also to maybe work on a functional resume instead of a chronological. That kind of helps you, say this is my function and this is how I can apply this skill to this new experience. I kind of did that a long time ago, where I transitioned from a graphic designer into UX. Half of my career was in graphics and print, and then I transferred over into the UX. And so some of the skills that I had as a graphic designer were transferable over into the UX field in the space. And then I'm getting all these little Brady Bunch pictures messed up, but whoever said the telling your story, you just have to tell that story is like who you are and why you feel you're a benefit to the new company with all these skills. I mean, if you're customer service, you probably have a lot of listening skills, maybe active listening skills. You're probably could be empathetic, and that's a really good skill to have, to be able to listen and understand the customer's issues and struggles, and then you can bring those into the new position as well.
Yeah,
I would also like to share something about it. In a company you work, even it's retail, you work in a company that probably has product designers, researchers, product managers as well. And now you're going to UX. How the things you did in the past translating to helping those teams in the companies you worked for, because this way you can translate what you did into what product managers or researchers in that company could use to improve the customer, to improve the business itself. So you're already been working with facing clients. You have already been understanding how it's done in this way, but how can you translate that to what a product designer in your company would ask for you to gather information from these clients you face? This is a good way for you to translate one way of work into another way of work.
This is Anthony. Lynette, are you currently in a corporate environment or like a retail customer facing environment?
I'm actually no longer employed. I decided to leave my employer to fully just focus on, I joined a boot camp for product design. I self-educating, joining in volunteer projects, so dedicating my time, but I did come from a background of that just recently. So it's still very fresh. I feel like everything that I experienced in my previous employer.
That's great. So I will say I spent the last year mentoring with Career Foundry, which is another UX bootcamp. The thing I found was the biggest barrier to transitioning is people that are coming from more of a retail customer facing scenario versus a corporate customer facing role. Because in a corporate facing role, you start to develop what you consider product sense, right? So you understand that we're delivering a product and what the value is to the customer. That is a very different set of experiences that you need to translate from being in a barista or some other customer service facing thing in a retail environment. So the fact that you have that's huge, and it's very much easier to translate that. If you have the opportunity to take your bootcamp experience and augment it with any level of practical experience, even if it's pro bono, that's going to be huge, because a huge part of transitioning into UX design and UX research is understanding the nuances of having relationships with product managers and developers and other people where your soft skills such as negotiation and influence come into play, where we might be able to create a specification or a user flow that is ideal, user experience is ideal, but we have to negotiate with them as to what's possible and get to the point of what is optimal based on what is desired and what is possible, right? And so if you can start to help hiring managers understand that you can bridge that gap between what you would love to see and what is possible to see and make the appropriate trade-offs, that is, I think, where you're going to make the biggest gains in finding traction with those hiring managers.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Great questions, and thanks everyone for the feedback. I see a few other people with their hands raised, so I'm going to go from the left to right. So Ayushi?
Hi, Thank you for great insights. Really loved the recommendations you guys made. Regarding the UX research experience you mentioned, how would you create a portfolio that reflects that? Because it's very difficult to start a career or a portfolio that would highlight all your UX research qualifications.
That's a great question. We did do, we have a workshop specifically about UX research portfolios, and we can share the link in the chat. That's a great resource. I think, there are definitely some resources online. Does anyone have anything that they can share as a tip for that?
I just wanted to share my experience. I was a market researcher before I became a full-time user researcher. And in my interview, I just shared 2 of my previous market research projects, and they were totally fine with that. So as long as a research project and you showcase your thinking process and you demonstrate the value and result, I think that'll be fine.
Ayesha, can you give a little more information on the background you're coming from in trying to create a portfolio?
Yes. So I am currently taking the UX Google design professional certificate. And I come from a background of, I was pre-med, and then now I'm changing fields into UX. So I have barely any experience with the field, except that I was part of a club in college, which dealt with user-centered design and human-centered design. So that's the only experience I have with the field. So no industry experience or, yeah.
So not to step on anybody else that was going to reply, but I will quickly say, in my experience, you can take the existing classroom case study and use that. I would say if you can augment that with either volunteer work or some other practical experience to bolster additional case studies, those will have even more weight than your classroom study. And there are plenty of places where you can volunteer. There's Catch a Fire, UX Rescue, and things like that. And I think we have a set of resources on the Slack channel that you can look at for places to volunteer. But that would be my advice, is to do and get additional case studies where you can demonstrate that UX research and how you've identified a problem and translated that into recommendations and demonstrate the impact of those recommendations.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
Awesome.
May I add one thing to that, please?
Sure.
All right, thank you. So one of the things that I faced, I want to share my experience that when I transitioned from business analyst to UX research, I had a little bit of experience and I had 2 published papers in HCI, Human Computer Interaction, but I didn't have any industry experience when it came to UX research. So what I did was, how I landed my job was, I kind of communicated with companies trying to address their problems directly, identify their problems and UX problems, and present them in a very insightful way. So what I figured that, hiring managers and CEOs, when they try to interview you, that they examine how you present and what you present, and how impactful would it be to the development or the improvement of the product that you're talking about. So I think that's what my experience was. And yeah, I'm now working on my own project. and I'm trying to write multiple research papers. That's a different story, but yeah, that's what's my experience. Thank you.
That's great. Thanks for sharing that. All right, I'm going to move on to our next question, and I see Neha.
Yeah, hi everyone. I had question related to like resume and portfolio. So I'll give quick brief about me. So I was working as a UX designer for 2 years, and then like in last fall I started my master's in human factors engineering, and currently I'm in my second semester. So I'm looking out for a summer internship right now. So I want to do internship as a UX researcher and not as a UX designer. So the question is about resume, like how do I put into the resume that I want to apply for UX researcher position, and previously I worked as UX designer, because I have projects which are like more UX designer role specific and not and nothing into research as such. And in my coursework, I haven't done a project which is into research as of now. So what do I show in my portfolio? Like which projects should be shown? Should I show something which was done in my academic course, or something which was my as a professional experience? I'm really confused about it. So yeah, I needed insight on that.
Can I chime in?
Yeah, absolutely. Go for it.
I think it's because it's fresh on my mind, because I just spent a couple of days redoing my resume. If you're familiar with LinkedIn, you have this about section that talks about your about, who you are. And I think that can easily be translated into your resume. Have an about section at the very beginning, just under your your name and your contact information. Just a 5-liner. It says, this is who I am, this is what I want to do. It's right there at the very top part of the real estate of the resume, and it grabs their attention, and you can like tell your story. It's all about storytelling. We, as researchers, we're storytellers, right? So tell that story of who you are and what your goals are, is the first thought that came to my mind. So
yeah, thank you for that insight. And yeah, I just wanted to know about like portfolio, like how do I put things into it? Like, I mean, how many projects, and should I put my professional experience and academic experience both into it, like both the projects into it? And would it be, considered like if I have a lot of projects into it, how do I decide onto it, and how much content should it have? I mean, the length of the project, how long should it be into the portfolio?
Just one more. I think you can translate those courses, those classes, into a case study. I just had that discussion with somebody about, I was struggling with my portfolio, and my old one is more on the pretty side. It's like the end product, but not really about the story of how I got to that end product. So if you can take those pieces in your portfolio that you already have, and if you have any artifacts of how you got to there, would be beneficial in your portfolio as a case study per project. It's like, this is what the problem was. These are the steps that I did to get here. These are the iterations that I got through. If there's any comment or discussion that happened throughout those projects, to document that and bring that forward. So that's my thought.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I'm just going to say a couple things to waste time until Ari can chime in with a golden nugget, because I really want to hear what he has to say. But what I would say is, coming from a UX design, I'm probably like Mike, where I've got 20 years experience where I wear the full gamut. And so what I've done on my portfolio is I've kind of tried to tag my case studies with what things I highlight, whether it's design, strategy, or research, or all three. And depending on, I actually created multiple versions of my portfolio to emphasize one versus the other. So as a designer, you very likely done a lot of research, and it may not be as much generative research, but it may be evaluative research to validate your design. So I would highlight that, right? And I would put the emphasis on the parts of the process that reflect what you're trying to apply for. So I'm going to yield the rest of my time to Ari.
Yeah, so I'm glad you did that, because did you hear what Anthony did there? That it made my point as I was typing it. His portfolio isn't about him. It's not like, hey, I'm going to show you all the cool things, me. It's, I've got the skill set. I'm going to show you how I can apply it to solve your problem. It's all about your audience. Think about like jobs to be done, anything that we've always heard. You are a product or a service. Like I know I hate breaking it down that way, but I'm going to. You're a product or service. You're selling that product or service to a business who wants that to solve their problems. All you need to do is tailor that in a very easy, like, don't like a lot of people love to cram a bunch of shit in there. They put like words everywhere and they do all it. Show them that you can solve their problem and they will hire you. It is that. All you have to do is convince them. And you'll see, I wrote up there, go back to Aristotle. You have to ethos, pathos, logos. You have to show them, build emotion, build credibility, show them that you're credible, which is where some of you are struggling because you're like, well, I haven't done this before. It goes back to this movie I saw, The Boiler Room. A sale is made on every call. Either they're selling you on a reason they're not going to buy, or you're selling them on a reason they should buy. It is exactly that. Every time, every contact you have with a company, they're either selling you on why they shouldn't hire you, or you're selling them on the reason they should. That's it. It is, and I know it's painful, and I'm sorry that I'm being this focused on it, but that's what it is. So if you're not selling them, they've sold you. They've closed. You didn't. I don't know what else to add to that, Anthony.
Can I jump in on this as well? So I am in the second year of my master's degree, and I have interned somewhere throughout my entire master's degree. So I've been through this, specifically the internship search process. It is a little bit different than looking for a full-time job, and the one difference that I really want to point out, and I think this is the thing that got me hired at all of the internships, is that when you're applying to those types of jobs, they want someone who is going to be open to learning. Like obviously any job like that you need to express, like you need to come at it with a level of humility, but especially as a student, like the places that you're applying to understand that you're a student, but expressing within your case study, and a case study is as long as it takes to tell the story of the thing that you are trying to solve. So there is really no like set length, but try and keep it not too long, not too short. But ending with, or like expressing to the people that you are interviewing, that you're talking to, that you have the ability to grow and you have the ability to learn because you are a student and you are just getting into this field. And if you come at it with like, I already know all my stuff, I don't need to learn, that's not going to be helpful. Like you want to come at it with this. I put at the end of every case study, I have a slide on, this is what went well and this is what did not go well, and this is what I'm going to learn for when I go off into my next project. So I found that to be extremely helpful for, I think, all internships, but just any job, like letting them know like, yeah, I'm fallible, I'm human, but this is how I'm gonna learn.
Amazing. All very great advice. Thank you so much. I'm going to just wrap up. I see Jocelyn's hand up, so I'm going to wrap up with that as our last question for happy hour. So go for it, Jocelyn.
Thank you so much. So my question is about soft skills. So I hear you guys talking a lot about soft skills and how you can use them to sell yourself. But my question is, how do I do that on my resume, on my LinkedIn, basically on like the first impression that a recruiter sees? Because if you put me in an interview setting, I'll show you my soft skills, like no problem. But it's, when I'm applying to jobs where there's 200 applicants within like 1 hour of that job being posted, how do I make sure that I translate those soft skills to the recruiter who is checking my resume, my LinkedIn, my portfolio?
I'll jump in for you, Jocelyn. So Mike mentioned it earlier. At the top of your resume, you could do a few lines that kind of introduces you. Don't use that. That is valuable real estate. In copywriting, there's a concept that says every line The point of first line is to get you to read the second line. The point of the second line is to get you to read to the third line. It's the same concept. Don't waste that valuable real estate on saying I'm a qualitative researcher, because if some of that's table stakes, okay? Like all of us should be able to do some basic interview stuff, qual or quant. Like there's things that I said research stuff. Use that to kind of highlight some of those things. On your LinkedIn profile, at the top of the page, there is a big box right around the circle that's there. Use that. Put your personality there. Like let them see some personality. There are your resume plus your LinkedIn profile plus your portfolio, plus if you have a website. Those are all part of a marketing story. I can tell you that as a hiring manager, when I see a resume, I look at the resume, it probably gets 90 seconds of my attention. And that's being very, very generous. It might get 60 seconds, maybe even less. I am looking explicitly for show me an outcome. Show me that you get that I want you to tell a story. Notice I've been hitting storytelling pretty hard, because to me, that is the most underappreciated skill that we have. But it's the one that has the biggest impact. The next thing I look at, the very next thing I do is I go to LinkedIn. So make sure that your LinkedIn profile is dialed in. It at a minimum, it needs to have a picture, it needs to have that header, it needs to have a summary, and it needs to have your job. I don't need the job stuff filled in, but I want to see a work progression, and I want to see that it's dialed in enough to do that. And then those things will give me enough to know if I want to talk to you. Once, like you said, once you're talking, soft skills will come through. That's my advice for what it's worth. 2 cents.
To also go against Ari as well, on that resume, if you have space at the bottom, on the back side of mine, I have my education and my certifications, and then I have a section at the bottom that says skills, and that's where I wiggled in some of my soft skills, was in that section below, where I talked about, okay, these are the tools that I use to get my job done, but these are the skills that I have. So your qual, quant, and behavioral attitude, and all that kind of stuff. But then I wiggled in these words of empathetic, active listener, those soft skills, active persuasion, collaborative, all those. I stuck them in there. So I don't know if he'll get, if guys like Ari will get to the second page and read that part, but that's where they are. And if you're using that, your resume goes through that computer, it'll grab those words, so you'll have them in there.
And to Mike's point, I do that too. Like if I could share my screen, you'd see at the top, there's an area of expertise, and that is where I put I have 15 keywords, but I do that for applicant tracking systems because I want them to pick up those keywords. And I've learned what those keywords are over time are for the jobs that I would apply. I'm happy to share my resume with anybody here that wants to see it. Hit me up on LinkedIn. I will send it to you.
I'll say the same thing.
Yeah. What I would tell you though, is be cautious with my keywords. My keywords are for director level research positions. I've learned this over a lot of time with applying and doing this. I have my older resumes. I'm happy to give you the keywords that I applied for research positions.
Right. But we're all researchers, right? So we all know how to research our jobs.
Right.
Able to. I mean, that's what I spent the whole weekend on, is I researched LinkedIn, I researched Indeed, and I looked at the jobs. I looked at the key phrases. I wrote those down, and then I tried to rephrase them to fit me, because my job skills are different than Ari's or different Andy's. So, but I'll be willing to share mine as well.
The one thing that I just wanted to add on to those really good comments about communicating your soft skills, 2 points. So one is also have, quote, evidence for your soft skills. So anyone can say, I'm a great communicator. But again, that credibility, where is that coming from? So do you have anecdotes, or is your soft skill of negotiation communicated through a bullet of, oh, I negotiated XYZ during this project. So that need for evidence can be either in a portfolio, a resume, or even when you're doing an interview. So what are your greatest strengths? Yes, I'm a great communicator, but I'm repeating myself. what evidence do you have? Even just a side comment of, oh, my former manager, one of the things that he said in my evaluation was that I brokered connections across departments, something like that. Second point, really tactical, is that when you are revising things for your summary on your resume or the strip at the top of your LinkedIn, something I like to do when I'm drafting something new is new Word document or Google document, and I just start typing, and don't edit yourself along the way. So I'll say, oh, here's my really serious version. Here's my wacky out of the box, like, is anyone going to hire me if I actually post this version? And just, keep doing different versions. And then when I go back into edit mode, I go, oh, that this punchy version was kind of fun, maybe too far, but I can dial it back a little, because no one's looking at your Word doc, right? It's just you and the letters. So that has helped me sometimes if I want to inject a little bit more personality. Go big first, and then you can edit yourself later.
I like that, Elizabeth, a lot. And another thing, I got some really good advice from a former coworker, and he like Anthony and Ari are saying, that people just look at it quickly. I think we're all accustomed to glancing and scanning. I was encouraged to put a section about achievements. I think maybe it was mentioned before, but in that achievement section, you're talking about the story, you're talking about the data points that you help to improve. But those little achievement sections is sort of a highlight for your resume behind it. So if you can put it up, a welcome page, and then put highlights of what you achieved, and like put those words in there as well to grab the attention of the recruiter or the hiring manager to go a little bit deeper into your resume.
All right. Thank you so much. I really appreciate all of your help. Thank you.
Thanks. And then Autumn, I saw your hand was up, and it was up before too. So did you have a final question or thought you wanted to share?
Yeah.
Right.
Oh. Yeah, I did. This question is actually for Elizabeth Riddle. Earlier you had mentioned that you are currently in your master's program. And I just want to know if you can kind of share a little bit about the program and like some of the things that you're learning versus why you decided to go with a master's versus a boot camp. And if this is and if it's a bit too long of a question, I'm totally okay with like taking it offline, because I also know we're kind of over and I want to respect everybody's time as well.
Yeah, no, I can go just really quickly. I went with a master's degree instead of a boot camp because when I got my bachelor's degree in neuroscience, I found out about UX when I was graduating from my bachelor's degree in neuroscience, and was down the path to become a teacher. And this is back in 2018. And I was believing the hype that like you didn't need any experience to get into UX. And I'm like, that's BS. That's not true. So I spent a good long while trying to break into UX, not able to do it. And what I was noticing with different job descriptions was, one, you needed experience to get experience. So it was in that cycle. And then I also saw like I was telling a few other people, I saw that job descriptions were saying like, oh, minimum requirements are a bachelor's, but we would prefer a master's. And so when I saw them, like, okay, I can read between the lines on this. Like, even if I have a bachelor's degree, I'm probably going to get chosen over someone who has a master's is going to get chosen over me, or PhD. So I understood that I also just didn't have the educational background that I needed for the jobs, because no matter what, even if you are coming from a different field, like you do need to have that base level of understanding of like what different methodologies are and how to apply them and have that practical experience. So that's why I personally went back and just bit the bullet and got my master's degree. At the time when I was looking, I saw a lot of boot camps that I didn't trust. Quite frankly, like I saw the cost of a boot camp, and then I saw a lot of people who came out of those boot camps going, I can't find a job. And so I'm like, okay, I know that with a master's degree, one, it's accredited. I don't have to worry about that. not being accredited, and two, it's going to offer me more than just an education. There's also this huge network of alumni who were in that program who are now, I'm at the University of Michigan. There is a huge network of alumni members from that program who are now working in different UX fields. And then my peers are also in UX, and this degree program is information science with a emphasis in UX design and research. So all of the coursework that I'm getting is preparing me for the job market. And I found all of the work that I've done so far has been in that in the program has been complementing what I'm doing in the real world, because I am working now as a UX research part-time. I'm working as a UX researcher. So I found that it's been really complementary, but the reasons of like just not trusting boot camps, knowing I'm lacking those fundamental like skills, fundamental education, knowing that it's a big investment. It's a lot of money to go back to school. And I understood that. And I know that's not feasible for a lot of people, but for me, this felt like the best option based off of where I was coming from. So if anyone's looking for any more information as to why, I think I put my LinkedIn in the chat, but I will talk about this all day. So
thank you. That was really helpful and really insightful. I've been kind of going back and forth for like the last couple of months about which one I should do and which one's probably best. Hearing your story has really been insightful. Thank you.
Good.
Awesome, thanks. And that's why we're here too. And this is why we really love the happy hour portion, is so everyone has a chance to kind of jump in, connect, and talk to people who you wouldn't necessarily otherwise talk to, and share different perspectives. So with that, I'm going to sort of wrap it up for tonight. I wanted to thank you all for joining. Thanks for staying for happy hour. Thanks for contributing to such insightful, conversations. And make sure you kind of keep up with us, Slack, social media, and hopefully we'll see you at our next event. So thanks, everyone.
Will this recording be available?
Yes, it will. I'm not sure who asked that, but yes. We'll post it in the next week or so.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.